Hello, welcome.
Recording in progress.
Hello, welcome.
Excuse me.
We have a new room set up. This is fun. It's kind of like a hug. So call to order. Our March 2026 Police Commission meeting is called to order. We will first review and approve our agenda. Do I have anybody that would like to?
Move to adopt the agenda.
Thank you, Commissioner Rady. Have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bradley. All those in favor to approve the agenda as is, say aye.
Hi.
All right, we have, I saw you, Commissioner Bertrand. We have unanimous moving forward. Thank you. Do we have anybody for public comment this evening? No one has signed up? No one? Okay. All right. Welcome, audience. Thank you for being here. All right, so jumping to our February 2026 minutes. Do we have anybody that would like to open up for discussion the February minutes?
I got one.
Thank you, Commissioner Rady. Do you have a second?
Well, I have one correction.
Do I have to have a second to open it up for talking?
No,
Oh, great, go for it.
no, we can talk about it. And
Beautiful.
approve it as corrected. Only one on page 8. Commissioner Lyman, the phrase of the comments is repeated. So that should be reduced to one of the comments. Other than that,
Any other comments, questions, concerns? Lovely. All right, move to approve the amended February minutes with Commissioner Rady's update. All those,
Oh,
please.
oh, I was just gonna say, that was a motion, I was just gonna second it, so we can move on.
Yes, please.
Second,
Excellent. Do we have to vote? I'm gonna get one of these days. All those in favor of moving forward with approving the amended by Commissioner Rady February 2026 minutes, all of those in favor, please raise your hand or say aye.
Hi.
Okay, motion approved unanimously. Moving on. Liaison report. Counselor Groves, would you like to start us off this evening?
remember what happened in the last month, we just went on council, so we're, that doesn't mean the work stops, it just means there's no council meetings or work sessions. Which is nice because it gives us time to schedule extra meetings. But, now Jennifer, do you have anything?
I don't think there's been anything really police related. I think we talked last time about the RFP went out for peer navigator / cahoots thing, but nothing, that's not been finalized, so.
There's been a lot going on, but it just really not police related.
Thank you, Counselor Groves. Commissioner Yang, it sounds like you added to that, but did you want to add any? Perfect, okay, thank you. Commissioner Neal.
Yeah, the Civilian Review Board met on Tuesday. Unfortunately, I'm traveling for work, so I couldn't attend, but I did review the case file that we looked at, and I guess I would recommend, watching the I would recommend for anybody interested in how we think about use of force policy and its implementation in a police department and the sort of contrast between community expectations of use of force and then how we can sort of implement use of force policy related to discipline in a police department. I think it's an interesting case to probably watch the discussion about. I couldn't participate in the discussion, so I did send in comments. For everybody's reference, in my previous job, I worked in the police bureau in the city of Portland and how we define reasonableness and uses of force in police departments across the United States is really guided by case law. And so there's lots that is complicated about that. And sometimes that even means that an agency like the Eugene Police Department that has, I think, one of the best sort of management systems of all police departments that I've worked with, even in those cases, sometimes always um, we can't always manage uses of force in the way that we would like to, I think, because of how it's defined in law. And so this was a case where an officer used, a bit of force, and I don't, in my opinion, and I think probably in the CRB's opinion, it didn't seem justified. But because of sort of how the law works, there was not a way to sort of address that in discipline. So I think it's an interesting challenge that we face as communities across the United States. So that's my only report from the CRB. I wasn't able to attend. The auditor might be in the room, so if he has additional comments, he could make them. But I won't volunteer that. That's my offer.
Happy to add, we did have a training where Internal Affairs explained to the public the process of how an Internal Affairs case goes through. And I think we also notably recognized a situation where a 10-month-old was in cardiac arrest. And the officer stepped in and saved the child's life. And we recognized that one of the dispatchers was in training. And one of the officers was in phase 0, which means they hadn't even completed the academy yet. And they found themselves out there saving a life. So we recognized some good stuff as well. I think that probably covers it.
Thank you both. And last but certainly not least, Vice Chair Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm reporting today for the Human Rights Commission. And we had our February meeting focused on our new work plan and our annual report to City Council. Discussed some specifics related to hate symbols in architecture in the city of Eugene that predate the use of symbols. Some of these symbols as actual symbol of hate. Well, essentially, swastikas included in architecture that predate the Third Reich's reign and in Germany. And so it's something we just kind of, at least at the HRC, just discovered that it actually is throughout the Pacific Northwest, often in chimneys, strangely enough, in residential homes. So that was topic of discussion too. We also have an event on the 19th coming up. It's part of the HRC's film festival. It's the last of the in a series on immigrant rights, and it's on the 19th at the Farmers Market Pavilion from 5:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. That film is called The Undocumented Lawyer, and it's part of the series Immigrant Rights or Human Rights. And that concludes my report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Bradley. Yes, that's your name. Oh, gosh. All right, Commissioner comments. We'll start with Commissioner Bershant.
Thank you so much, Chair. No comments here today. Unfortunately, I thought I was going to be with you all this time, but unfortunately, I had a doctor's appointment here. But I am here at least virtually.
Thank you, Commissioner Bertrand. Councilor Ye.
No, I don't have any additional comments. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilor Ye. Commissioner Neal.
Yeah, no additional comments. Hello from Victoria, BC. I'm traveling for work, so yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Neal. Vice Chair Bradley.
No comments today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Rady.
Shockingly, not a thing to say.
Well, you guys are gonna make this really fast. Commissioner Espinoza Blake.
Happy to have you back. Welcome back. No, I don't have any.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Donovan.
I did. I just wanted to give a huge shout out to the EPD community engagement team. I've been participating in the Citizens Police Academy, and I just feel like there's been like a ton of thoughtful detail into the presentations and learned a lot, and they've answered so many of my questions, which has been really helpful. And we can just tell that everyone who's been doing the presentations is really passionate about the work. So I just appreciate that a lot.
Thank you, Commissioner. Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, I do have something to share here. We have been hearing a lot in council about why are we not, people want us to deny the permit the feds have, or deny the permit for the feds to install security fencing. And the reality is we can't. And I asked our city attorney about this. I feel funny talking about this with attorneys in the room that know much more about the law than I do. But I did do some research from some credible sites. And generally, the federal government does not have to apply for local permits due to the supremacy clause and the sovereign immunity, which dictates that federal activities cannot be regulated by local laws. I know that was true when they built the federal courthouse. They didn't have to go through any of the permitting process with the city. They have their own system that they use. They follow a lot of the same codes we do, but they don't have to apply for a permit. And the city doesn't have any authority to regulate that. So I think it's important for people to understand what the limitations of local government are. It's something I wish people had better training in basic civics, because we get a lot of expectations that the council can just fix everything, and we really have limitations. And then also I had a second question that we have raised all the time is, why isn't our police department protecting the protesters down at the federal building? And while the federal law enforcement does not have priority over local law enforcement, they fall under different rules. And they are the jurisdiction of authority on federal property and for federal crimes. And I don't know if you wanted to weigh in on that, Deputy Chief, but I just think it's frustrating to listen to people upset about things that aren't happening when they aren't things we really have control over. And so I guess that's the main thrust I'm trying to share, for anybody listening. I think it's important to understand that, in that our police department can only go so far. They aren't going to be interfering with federal law enforcement. That's not the authority that they have. And so to expect that isn't necessarily a reasonable expectation. But I think a lot of it stems from a lack of understanding. So I just wanted to share that information that I've learned this past week, and hopefully we can keep moving on and doing the best job we can to work within the authorities that we do have. Any attorney want to correct me on that? Sounds good. Well, I'm always nervous. I mean, I'm not an attorney. I've had no formal training, and I don't play one on TV. So, but at the same time, this stuff is readily available. Just a simple Google search will pop up all these different sources. Some of them are federal sources that you can look at. Some of them are from law schools. And it all says about the same thing, because I can't say I exhaustively went through all of the things that popped up on my search engine, but I looked at enough of them that they were all saying the same thing. I have to believe it's true. And then our city attorney's kind of giving us a basic, no, you can't do anything about that. But I like to know why. So anyway.
Thank you for sharing, Counselor Groves.
Questions?
Commissioner Lyman.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to acknowledge and congratulate Deputy Chief Burke for his ascension to that position and for taking it. And it's an important one. And Adams was good. So you got shoes to fill, and I'm looking forward to working with you. So thanks. And then the other thing is, I saw that the Oregon House passed a bill prohibiting Oregon law enforcement officers from wearing face coverings. And in general, I was like, yeah, all that we're seeing with the HSI and ICE and everything, very disturbing. But I also was like, wait a second. I want our EPD officers to have the right to wear an N95 mask in a lot of what they do as a personal choice. And given what we went through in the pandemic and mandates, everything, you know, I just thought, whoa, that would be really, really unfortunate if in trying to react to an issue, the legislature did that. So I went and looked up the law, and sure enough, they exempted that you are allowed to wear N95s, and I'm happy. And if that had not been the case, it would have been an issue that I would have felt strongly about. So so they got something right. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lyman. Apologies for abruptly ending last meeting. The power went out for a few hours where I was currently staying. So all is well now. And I wanted to thank everybody. I appreciate this commission so much. Since I started, the engagement you've all brought to the table, I'm super appreciative of. So thank you. Thank you for being part of this commission. Yes,
I apologize. Could I just go jump onto something Commissioner Lyman was talking about? You know, when we think of N95 masks, we think about the pandemic, but the reality is our responders are coming in contact with tuberculosis patients, meningitis patients. There's all kinds of really bad pathogens out there, and it's incredibly important that our people be able to protect themselves. And I would actually look for that as well when I saw that coming out, because I'm going, you know, I know what's out there.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. That's a personal choice, but every day they're faced with like, you know, communicable diseases that none of us want. And if they want to wear a mask, they absolutely should be able to. And thankfully the legislature allowed it.
Not only do our responders not want it, they don't want to take that home to their families either.
Yeah.
You know, so that's really important that we have the ability, our people have the ability to protect themselves.
thank you both. That's great topic. Deputy Chief, welcome.
Chair, thank you. Chief Skinner couldn't be with us tonight, so thanks for having me. I'm gonna just talk about some highlights of things that are going on in EPD right now. Commissioner mentioned the Citizens Police Academy kicked off last week, so and there's I think 2 members of the police commission that's in there, and so it's an excellent opportunity for officers to engage with our community members and different commissions and groups that are associated with the police department in some form or fashion. And so it's a great opportunity, and I appreciate everybody's involvement in that. One thing with my promotion was a trickle-down effect, which left a vacancy for captain in the police department. Chair sat in on the process. Thank you for your help with that. But I just wanted to announce that we recently had a captain's process, and Lieutenant Ryan Maloney was promoted to the rank of captain a few weeks ago, so probably after your last meeting. With that, he's got over 23 years of experience, he's an instructor in multiple cadres, had experience on tactical teams, crowd control teams, worked in both patrol and the finance and admin divisions. Dealt with recruiting and backgrounds. So he's got a wide variety of skill set. He was a sergeant since 2014 and then promoted lieutenant a couple of years ago. And now he's going to be the captain of the operations support division. With that, for everybody's awareness, there's some movements also with the other captains. So the opportunity afforded for some captains to move around in the police department. So we recently announced that so Captain Maloney will take over the operations support division. Captain Roy Wright, who has been in here before, will take over my position as the investigations captain. And then Captain Harrison will take over as the patrol captain. So it's a lot of movements going on. And then in addition, I think I just sent an email out about a lieutenant's process that we're going to start up here soon. It's going to open soon. So there's a lot of movements. I think it's a sign of a healthy organization. And I talked about it at CPA. I have a perspective of being from a different organization, and an organization that can have so many police applicants for sergeant over the past couple of years, and then internal qualified internal applicants and then lieutenant as well. I anticipate a lot of people that are qualified willing to do that. I think it's a sign of a healthy organization, of building a big bench for the future to come. So it's a good sign. Any questions about that? No? Okay. So I just wanted to also highlight some good work that's going on in finance and admin with recruiting and hiring. I've been asked in almost every community meeting or session that I've been about vacancies, because I know we have over 20 some vacancies right now. We've talked about the reasons why and everything else, but there's a lot of innovative work that's going on within our recruiting and hiring section. And one thing that I've seen done here that I haven't seen done in any other police department in Oregon is they're kind of taking a roadshow approach to try to get candidates to eliminate barriers for people to be able to apply and go through the entire process. And for those that aren't aware, the hiring process for police officer, well, from when I started, it used to be 9 months from start to finish, and we've tried to reduce that to try to get qualified candidates. But by taking the entire recruiting team down to Southern Oregon University over the past few weeks and taking the whole show there where they do from start to finish, introduction interviews, the ORPAT, so the physical agility testing, all in one-stop shop, created a good opportunity. We successfully got 3 candidates in one day, start to finish, all the way to backgrounds, a good diverse group of candidates that, so it's right in line with where we want to be. And I mentioned this as CPA. I know 3 doesn't sound like a lot, but for those of us that have been in background hiring for this industry right now, that's quite a bit for one day to get everything done. And then we anticipate moving forward to Western Oregon University and then to other universities and just kind of expanding this because we see a lot of success in this. And I think we're being pretty innovative in that. So I'm hopeful for the future. So it's good. And then I wasn't able to be here for the tour of the wellness room, but I just, and I'm sure there were some discussion points last meeting about wellness and the things that are going on here at EPD. I just want to highlight some of those as well. I just think it's a great thing that we're doing with the wellness room, the physician that's available, a culturally competent physician that's available to help with mental health and the health of our officers. We have the second round of Sigma Tactical, which is a physical health screening for cardio for our staff. And then we recently sent several staff out to the International Association of Chiefs of Police seminar on wellness, which talks about physical, financial, mental, spiritual health and stuff. So everything, the reason I mention it is because the support of the community, the support of our council and the support of everybody within the city for understanding that the physical, mental health, financial health of our officers really only just supports how we interact with our community members and the retention and the health and stability of the Eugene Police Department. So, and then lastly, I want to do something that is a little unusual, but it's coincidental based on the policy that we're gonna review. A couple of days ago, we got a kudos commendation that came in. I don't know if this is the appropriate place for it or not, but it's also an opportunity to embarrass Sergeant McIntyre, so I'm gonna do it. But we've got a commendation that came in, and I'm just gonna read it verbatim if it's okay with the commissioners. This is last night at the Eugene Airport while I was waiting at baggage claim. We were witnessing a domestic violence incident in which a young man repeatedly brought his face about 2 inches away from the face of his girlfriend and in the most angry, intense, intimidating way. In a very amped up voice, seething with anger and controlling demands, he repeatedly told her no and would not give her phone back. When she moved back, he followed her always inches from her face and super angry. Many of us were getting ready to intervene and the fear and anger vibe was spreading throughout the crowd. Then suddenly several people did intervene. A very angry random guy who was super amped up himself yelling, I'm just reading this verbatim, the guy that he couldn't do that to a woman. And then a quieter man and a woman who had a much more grounded vibe. The woman stepped quietly in between the couple and faced the angry perpetrator and spoke quietly to him, while the man ushered the young woman away from her abusive boyfriend and started asking her questions. When he asked her for ID, she rightly said, "Who are you?" And then he said they were both off-duty Eugene police officers, and he showed her his ID. He said the woman was sergeant with her local force, and then explained a lot about how she could do what she was doing. She was a total badass. That's in here. In the quietest, most effective, confident way you can imagine, setting a clear limit and letting the situation diffuse without feeding it with her own reaction at all. It was amazing to witness, and I was so grateful that they were there and that we have them in our community and police force. I know the police force are not always great, but in this case, they were great, and they weren't even on duty. They were just coming back from a vacation or something and minding their own beeswax, and when they were needed, they stepped in. Thank you to both of them and to all who serve in this way. So Sergeant McIntyre, Officer Johnson was the other. They were on their way back from this ICP wellness training. And so it just highlights, I just thought it was coincidental. It was highlights what we're about to talk about today. And gives credence to excellent police work and how much we care even when we're not in a uniform carrying a gun. Yeah. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Tim.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it, Sharon.
And adding the passing, I like that.
Badass.
So we are going to jump in to policy 320, domestic violence and restraining orders. I did want to make a quick comment in talking with Sergeant Jordan. She has explained the process of when she edits our policies, she's meeting with multiple people. So we are just one of many that she edits with. So focusing, our job is to obviously provide our citizens review, what are they called? Ideas, thoughts, comments towards the policy. So my ask is that we steer away from wordsmithing and fine tuning some of those edit pieces and focus more on the policy itself. If there are words that need obviously defining and or they pertain to the understanding of the policy, that makes sense, but it's more useful for our time to put forth the effort to focus on the meat and potatoes of policy. With that, let's talk about 320, shall we? Hold on, I can read my notes. Did you wanna?
Could start us off, that'd be great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you all. I know this is a really long policy, and so hopefully you had a chance to read it. You'll notice it was recently revised in December of 24, so I thought, oh, maybe there's not that much to do with it, but there is a fair amount that we can maybe update. So what I've done, I just want to clue you into a few things. We have added a lot more procedural language. Not because any one thing, it's just a really nice way when, say, an officer takes a call that's domestic violence related, but it's not something that they've frequently dealt with. It's nice to have that procedural aspect there so that they don't miss any steps, so that they know this is, oh yeah, refresh my brain, this is how I'm going down this path. So we wanted to make sure that was in the policy. We wanted to also be more inclusive of children and how that plays into domestic violence situations. It kind of changes things when children are present. So, and of course, our subject matter experts will talk about that. And then we also added the recommendation for training for the department. So with that, I want to introduce our subject matter experts and then kind of allow you and them to kind of have a conversation here. So right next to me, we have Sergeant Annie McIntyre. Her reputation precedes her now. She has been a law enforcement officer for 15 years. She was also a violent crimes detective for 7 years, where her focus was domestic violence cases, focusing heavily on family violence. So focusing on family violence, domestic violence cases. She's been a sergeant now for almost 2 years, but she's had a lot of input in this policy revision, both in the last one as well as this one, and will continue to do so. We also have Detective Sean Kelly here. He's a violent crimes detective, and he's been in law enforcement for 27 years. 18 years of that were at EPD, and he's been in violent crimes unit for 6 years, also with a caseload that heavily focuses on domestic violence. So with that,
I don't really know if we want to start with, you all have input, or if you want to kind of start asking questions, whichever.
I would love
For both of you to jump in and just sort of explain, discuss, and then we can ask you questions. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Or I should ask, do you all have questions first? What do you think?
I think that's the best way to go forward myself.
I actually have a question. I knew that we were gonna talk about this and my next door neighbor had an incident 2 weeks ago over at Oakway. She was at the Albertsons walking to her car and she noticed a man being very aggressive with a young gal and she was trying to get away from him. He grabbed her by the hair and pulled her into the car. So my friend called 911, got the make and model of the car, was able to give that to the 911 caller. They said that they would call somebody out. They called her back and they said, we found them. They pulled him over, but they asked the girl, there was a second girl in the car, both younger. And they asked if they were all right, and they declined to make any, to press any charges. They said it was just a misunderstanding. The driver of the car, according to my friends, seemed very, very aggressive and the whole situation just seemed weird. So she said, is what will happen? And they said nothing because nobody's complaining about anything. She said, but I'm making a complaint because of what I saw. Is that enough to generate anything to happen? And she was told not. So I said, I'll ask about that because I don't know enough to know about what can happen when it's somebody who is not involved in the actual situation, but is witnessing something and is a very credible witness. What can be done?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, oftentimes in domestic violence, we don't have a third party witness. Obviously, I don't know all the details of that. And, we have very formal processes for the review. So, they still have to meet the same standard, reasonable suspicion, probable cause to make an arrest. And so, while a statement is a great piece of evidence, it can't just be a statement alone, and the officer is, accountable for making sure they understand the veracity of the statement. And so I don't necessarily have enough information for that incident in and of itself. But for circumstances like that, this is what this policy tries to do, is to create a better understanding. You did cue on a few things when you told me that story that I made. It was like, yeah, these are things that can be followed up on as well, even if it can't be in the immediate. So I will say that sometimes about domestic violence, patrol is your first and integral intervention into family violence. And sometimes we only get that shot, right? A lot of things can dissipate, or those dynamics can come right back into play very fast compared to other crimes that, have much more objectivity to it. You're dealing with a dynamic, right? And that needs to be fully flushed out and understood, but it also needs to be trained and practiced. And with limiting resourcing, right? You have officers going from a robbery to a criminal trespass to a domestic violence. So I think it's a good example that you have, and one that we do our best to consider in our training to make sure that they are getting the best objective evidence, not just the statements of the suspect or the victim, because there's an investment there that is different than a property crime or something else like that. I think about when you say camera, or when you say Oakway, I think of cameras. And so I just don't have enough information to talk about that one in particular, but when you bring up that incident, there's a lot of things that we've tried to address in order for us to have the best domestic violence investigations possible. And that's detailed out specifically even when you talk about, we talk about electronic evidence in here. We talk about separating parties. We talk about that being both visual, physical. We talk about, it's not, one thing that we do right now is we send 2 officers. That's a one-on-one in police, right? When it comes to domestic violence, it's not the same as a person behind a cash register that had a gun pointed at them. They're going to be fully compliant, right? There's no dynamics there. When you have someone that the person that you're stopping and you might arrest pays all the bills and provides all the things, they have an investment in us not necessarily doing our job well. And so we wrote in here, a 3-officer response for something that is present and active, not a historical report. So that example is a really good example of there being a huge volume of an investigation for a patrol officer. They may have just done a 2-minute traffic stop. A domestic violence investigation on patrol asks so much, and that is why the length of the policy is what it is. So I think it's a very good example, and because it's a good example, there's also 50 questions that I have for it. But that just speaks to the complexity of the cases.
Would it have made any difference if the witness had filmed it. And when contacting the officer said, here's what I saw. There's the guy, doing whatever he was doing. Would that have changed the reaction? I understand why the officer did not make an arrest based on, well, I saw, but would that have changed the situation dynamic?
When you bring up film, right, there's still the victim has to give a statement of level of injury, right? So someone can pull your hair, and if the victim is not cooperative and saying, no, that didn't hurt me, right, we lose the assault for. If the victim is saying, oh, I wanted to go into the car and I was willing and that's what I was trying to do, then we lose the coercion. And then we're kind of sitting at a harassment DV. So while we have documentation and absolutely can arrest on PC for harassment, domestic violence, you start to remove the mandatory level, right? If it doesn't include harassment. And then that's where you're in a complex situation of like, we want, when we talk about crimes against children, disclosure is a process. We don't want to put a victim in a situation that maybe makes it worse, right? And we don't get to know that or what that looks like, but we do have a responsibility to make sure that they're part of their own process, right? That's not going to come in place from empowerment if we're doing something completely off tilt from what they're wanting. And there's a balance there. Is the victim demonstrating things? And that's part of why we want the training to be put in place, because there is a difference of someone telling you no, but nodding yes, right? Whether it's with their body, which is like opening towards the door to let you in when they're saying that he's not inside, right? There are certain cues that domestic violence can provide, and that's why we need the training to be in play.
Thank you. Please. Oh, yes.
Playing that out a little further, so let's say that the incident starts unfolding from a vehicle stop and the officer observes that. I wasn't clear, does the officer then call for cover or backup or whatever so that you can separate?
Absolutely. I mean, that would be our officer safety recommendation, even outside of policy. I mean, outside of domestic violence.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
The information gave us also, we're not really sure if it's a domestic violence situation. I mean, it could be a friend situation. We don't know. That's one of the issues, that's one of the 50 questions she would get into. Is this going to get into a domestic violence situation? And then if it does, then that triggers possible mandatory situations, mandatory arrests and stuff like that. That the officers would have to dig into and maybe dig harder and stuff. Because a lot of times when we get into the witnesses in the car, in cars and stuff like that, they might not admit to being in relationships, these domestic type relationships. Sometimes they know the consequences of what's going to happen, and they've been through the system and stuff like that. So in answering your question, anytime somebody has the opportunity to videotape something, we really do like that quite a bit. So I'm never to get discouraged people from being a witness and videotaping, but it's still stuff we have to get certain thresholds and make sure if it is a domestic violence situation, or if it's some other situation that could be completely different that's being misinterpreted by the witness and stuff like that.
Thank you. Would you like to jump in and tell us everything? No pressure.
Okay. Oh, okay. So one thing that I think we actually made edits to the purpose and scope, even to start. The reason for that is that, when we did the revisions back in 24, we also did it next to the Cartley's Law policy. And so I will acknowledge that one of the things was that we were addressing a lot of children heavy in Cartley's Law case, obviously. And then we were moving to the domestic violence. And so in parallel, we captured it in the full umbrella, but we didn't necessarily independently address children as well in the domestic violence policy. So that's why we kind of want to be a little bit more children centered, because we had been much more intimate partner centered the first review. And we also wanted to talk about that obligation. Sometimes officers were struggling a little bit with whose responsibility was it for placement of children when you do make an arrest of the primary parent or both parents. And we do partner very intensely with DHS on domestic violence cases involving children. And speaking to that so that it doesn't seem like such a far resource, like it should be a parallel in-pocket investigation with the DOJ and DHS. So that's why we kind of just said provided assistance to victims and to provide intervention to support families with local partner agencies. Just to highlight that is the nature of a domestic violence investigation. Definition, go ahead. Okay. All right, yeah, trying to. Okay, the definitions we kind of adjusted, you'll notice the order of mental state is actually, we reversed that just because that's kind of the consideration we think we should take when we're going into the door. We shouldn't be starting with intentional, we should be starting with reckless. You know, we don't want to be addressing something at the highest level. We want it to be in the forefront of officers' mind that we want to catch this small. We want our interventions to come at harassment, we want to come at assault for, and we want to rehabilitate a home. You know, it's the intention of society for the home to thrive, not to always be in survival mode. And we just thought that flipping that from reckless instead of intentional, put a better mental state of this is what we're trying to do, intervene quick, and then hopefully we're never back. We added the Oregon Child Abuse Hotline. Again, that's the access to DHS. And I've just being on patrol recently, I've found that that's not as common knowledge as I had hoped it was. And it's just an immediate resource an officer can have. And, you know, some of the intention of this policy is for officers to feel like they can act more independently. And I think that they appreciate that.
Is that only the
No, this is never used for everyone and anyone. Mandatory reports, if you saw it out in the public, this is the Oregon Child Abuse Hotline. That's kind of like if you see that circumstance and it's happening to a child, you would call the you call 911, and you can also report Oregon Child Abuse Hotline. Or if you have a friend who is clearly in disarray and you see their apartment's a mess and children in the home, this is who you call to help if you don't think the police matter. And we have a shortcut when we call. It'll say if your law enforcement hit 4, and then we get kind of the shortcut to get a worker.
Does the hotline then contact, for example, if it was in Eugene Police? How's that work?
Yeah, it's a very good question. And unfortunately, about 4 years ago, they went to a hub type of network. So we actually call all the way up to Portland. Then Portland calls our regional office for us to get a worker. That call goes to a supervisor in one of our local offices, and then they decide like how acute it is. You know, usually on our side, the notification goes to the patrol sergeant. Typically, the officers will let us know we're calling the child abuse hotline. And then we decide the threshold level. We're going to notify violent crimes, and then violent crimes will notify across. That's how the parallel happens. Back in the day, yeah, it used to just be a call to the local agency, DHS office, but they took that number away from us, and now it's a central hub out of Portland.
So more of a lukewarm line.
Yes.
And in addition, there's another mechanism for reporting to law enforcement. They call them a 307 form that they sent over, reporting form. So DHS sends that form to us via email. They may call depending on what they determine to be urgent or not urgent. That's based on their threshold. So that comes directly to patrol through 911. Oftentimes that gets triaged through our violent crimes unit sergeants.
The officer safety dispatch. This is where we added, as I discussed, the assigned the 3 officers. You know, in being in a lot of more patrol briefings, what I was finding is that a lot of officers were saying, why isn't this the policy? Why isn't just the protocol that we get 3 officers for a male and a female fighting in the house? You know, because they do have to do that dual separation, because sometimes you have the neighbor calling saying, here, I'm hearing screaming and yelling, get off me, but can't necessarily determine gender or who's who, and we need to do that, and doing that one-on-one is just not ideal. You know, typically when it's dispatched with a weapon, there's just a natural cadence of a 3rd officer and then therefore a supervisor, so you have 4. But this being in policy allows it to be like known and clear to dispatch that the officer safety is a priority, and obviously that ideally does create a better, it's safer response, and then therefore we're not in a reactive posture. You know, we're meeting it initially, and the separations can happen, and then ideally we have less use of force circumstances at a higher level. The domestic violence related investigations. This is the stair step that Sergeant Jordan was talking about. This was obviously something Detective Kelly and I worked on this in the 24. I don't think we made very many changes to this.
No, some of the changes we made with the investigations were, the interviewing of children. Typically, we don't promote interviewing children. We want children to be interviewed forensically by forensic interviewers at Kids First Center. And we've kind of gone away from that for DV. Based on the advice of our district attorneys. Our district attorneys are wanting us to try to get basic statements from children on scene. So that when they make their filing decisions, if the arrests are made, they have that information, because sometimes when they go to the Kids First Center, it could be weeks before they're seen interviewed forensically, so the DA wants some basis to assist in his decision or on their decision whether or not they're gonna file a case. So we're starting a small adjustment in our procedures in telling officers when they arrive on scene, if children are present, to go ahead and ask very broad, open-ended questions and not follow up on it, and just to get basic statements. Based on what I've seen talking to children, if you ask them, they're gonna tell you and they're gonna talk a lot. And so you'll usually get the information you want without having to kind of dig in too much and stuff like that. We also, based on the advice of Kids First, the Kids First Center and the district attorney are asking officers to try to get eyes on all children that are present at the time of response. The Kids First medical staff states that based on research, many times children involved in domestic violence situation are also victims of abuse. They believe that if we're not getting eyes on children, we're missing possible evidence of abuse. So we're asking officers to attempt to get eyes on with compliance from guardians or whoever's at the scene and stuff like that.
We have two questions. But, 320.4, section C, community caretaking, the very last two words. What is that?
Community caretaking is somewhat of a it's not an exception to searches. It's basically when we feel like there is a need for us to go in and provide care to somebody. We have the authority to go in places we would otherwise need a search warrant based on the Constitution. If we think somebody's in need of medical assistance, we can go in and provide that help and stuff like that. Otherwise, basically the Constitution tells us we have to stay out unless somebody allows us to go in. So typically we like to get consent for people to allow us to go in, but sometimes they won't. But if we have a situation where somebody's injured and unable to provide care for themselves, we're gonna go in and help those people stabilize the situation. And then we'll step out and conduct our law enforcement duties and stuff.
Thank you.
Yeah, on 320.41, section D, as in David, on page 4. The rest of it I read through, and there were a few things I didn't quite understand, but was able to figure out, but this one troubled me. If a child is under 12 years and the officer needs a rudimentary interview with a child who would normally be interviewed by a KF, Kids First, to develop probable cause, the officer may do so, but only to the extent to develop probable cause for the arrest. That makes sense. The child should still be interviewed at KF. An example would be two parents, suspect and victim, in a DV case who refuse to answer any questions, but an 11-year-old child who witnessed the assault and can give general details about their observations. My concern, I thought about that, and my thought is, Dad's been hitting Mom. Officers appear, neither one will talk. The officer goes into the back room and talks to Sonny. Officer comes out, puts Dad in cuffs and takes him away. What happens to Sonny the next day, the next week? That I looked at that and I thought, ooh, that doesn't look entirely safe. I don't have a suggestion as to what would be better, but I looked at it and it worried me.
So I believe this is just, I believe, giving a very, very hypothetical situation, and it's a situation we often go to. What we go to more often than not is where one person is saying something happened and the other person is saying the exact opposite. And then we go in and say, 11-year-old boy or girl, what happened? And they say, Daddy hit Mommy. If Daddy is arrested, there are protections put in place once he goes to jail, if the case is filed, as far as no contact orders, and the children would be included in that and stuff like that, while the process is going forward. And then he's supposed to not go back to the residence. And then there's, as long as he honors the no contact order.
But the specific example here was neither adult is cooperating, and you get the information from a child. My thought is, if you act on it, the child has obviously been fingered as the source and the cause of someone being taken away. what are the consequences for the child going to be? The other parent is still in the house.
I can speak a little bit to that and kind of to add to what Detective Kelly was saying is, I mean, really, there's no good answer because these things are so complex. And what's gonna happen to Johnny, if nothing gets done, nobody can answer that question other than it's a bad environment. And we're trying to do our best with the situation. These things, when I say complex, is you're in domestic partner relationships, generally, you could have very cooperative people that are involved. You could have one that's cooperative, one that's not. You could have the situation that Detective Kelly spoke of where you have an officer trying to make a decision on what's a mandatory arrest for officers by state law, and they're trying to make a decision and there's nothing to tip the balance. And it's also an aggravator if a child witnesses it. And so all those things are part of a comprehensive investigation. And I think some of these, including contacting DHS and trying to make sure there's other secure safety measures in place for the kid post-incident, but there's no perfect answer to the question that you're posing. It's just a bad situation overall, so.
Vice Chair Bradley?
My question is this, is it possible that a sentence to the effective care should be taken to remove the child from any kind of triangulation or something like that would be an effective addition? It names the concern that's brought up and acknowledges that there is potential harm to come from the situation.
Yes, that is the DHS notification. These details would result in a DHS notification and a prompting of there being a protective plan in place, and then to be in the loop. That specific one is like two uncooperative parents, because what can happen and what is the role of DHS is that parents have to be protective, and eyes will go on if they're not being protective. And so while we can't articulate probable cause to arrest someone for not disclosing they're getting abused in front of their child, DHS can say, if you're having domestic violence in your home and you're not cooperative and being protective, we will intervene on the DOJ side, which is the civil side. So it's that arm that intervenes. It's not ours. It is important though that we make that notification. So it is rare, and that is why most of the time when children are involved, you do have a sergeant or a notification up to VCU that's kind of like, hey, these are at play, right? The MDT comes into play and everything comes in. So the multidisciplinary team, which includes all the interagency partners. So it is like everything you guys are pointing out is absolutely accurate to what is evaluated in these, and that arm lives with DHS, and it's been broken out of prosecution so that we don't lose cooperation. Sometimes we lose the victim in the prosecution, but DHS keeps them in the civil side of maintaining protection of their children.
Thank you. Commissioner Lynn?
Thank you. For the non-mandatory arrests like harassment or coercion, could you just talk for a bit about how you're training or explaining to officers how to use their discretion in making that decision? And then is there do you have the ability to tell one of the two actors, like, it will be an arrest if you don't leave and don't come back until tomorrow? You see, that's what you see all the time on the cop shows. Are we using that as a tool? Are we getting someone out of the house without mandatory, if it's a non-mandatory arrest?
So your specific statement about if you come back, you're gonna be arrested, I'll be honest with you, I learned very early on, I don't like making that threat. Because they do come back, and there's times they come back and I don't arrest them and I'm just stepping away, and then they learn real quick that I just bluffed them and they call me on it. So typically the harassment, the conversations are, if you have a crime and if it's gonna prevent a possible furtherance of violence, then
Take them to jail.
try to take enforcement action and stuff like that. We can't guarantee exactly what will happen once they go to jail, but we can do what we can use what tools we have to try to prevent furtherance of violence and stuff like that.
And you're saying because of harassment is a misdemeanor, they get to the jail, and it could be just a revolving door.
Well, actually, when you hit harassment and you put the moniker domestic violence, it does put in all those protection orders and they need to go in front of a judge for all those to come into play. So that's why it's important and it's in the policy that if you have, because reckless driving and harassment are not mandatory arrests and actually could go through municipal court. They don't have a domestic violence support system in play. So those have to go through circuit, even though they're misdemeanors, because DV comes into play and it allows for those protective orders to be facilitated by circuit court. And so that is also in the policy. And yeah, and that is the culture we're trying to push out of. If you have probable cause for domestic violence arrest, the intervention and the time and space is what we want to give. And it doesn't mean that it abolishes the home completely, but it gives the opportunity. And that DV, while APA is mandatory arrest for a certain crime type, domestic violence has a level of intensity both for us and for the home that we want to just mitigate at the lowest level possible for everything else to thrive. And so that is written in the policy. We did add reckless driving, harassment, and I can't remember the other one that creeps up on us.
Coercion.
Coercion. It's very rare I see an officer not make an arrest on coercion, but sometimes, or not add the DV moniker. What we were kind of seeing was more that criminal or reckless driving wasn't seeing the DV moniker. And then the reckless endangering and criminal mistreatment, where the child is either injured or the recklessly endangering is because of a traffic offense.
So if you take someone, if you arrest
Mhm.
and it's one of these misdemeanors, but you attach the DV moniker to it, that will trigger on the other side, like the protective orders, the no contact, okay.
Yes, it's a crime that constitutes domestic violence and it also adjusts how they are sentenced and overall handled in our court system.
I only wanted to add one thing in addition to what Sergeant Detective said is in circumstances when you have that when like maybe it's a harassment and neither person you can't get to an arrest or whatever. There's been I think there's a lot of highly suggestive suggestions to people that are involved, like trying to identify other places they can go, give them options to try to separate for a while and let things cool down. But there's also the Community Cares Program, which is funds that are supported by the Police Foundation. So officers have been pretty creative about finding places so for maybe somebody that can't afford like to go to a hotel for a night so they can detach and things can diffuse and stuff. So there's a lot of examples of those funds being used to try to help people get out of those situations because it's really in the best interest of everybody, right? We don't want to see something more severe happen and we want to diffuse the situation. So just wanted to add to that as well.
Councilor Good.
Thank you, Chair. So under a mandatory arrest for DV, how long is the hold period before they're eligible to be matrixed out of jail and released?
I mean, usually they're gonna see see a judge the next business day. So
Okay.
on a Friday, it could be wait till Monday. Any other day, it's gonna be, they're gonna see the judge the next day. They have certain requirement that they are gonna have to meet, such as showing of residence, having somebody basically almost take responsibility for that person. But then they do have bail option. I mean, everybody has a right to bail, so if they can bail out, they can bail out. As far as matrixing out without bail, I can't answer that because that's the jail's business, but basically, once they see the judge, it's usually at 1:30. They have the right to bail out, but they also have certain criteria they have to meet. Like I said, such as providing another residence where they're going, and somebody has to kind of almost sign them out that they're taking responsibility for them, and they are going to be staying at a certain location.
So if somebody's taken into custody at 0300, they could theoretically be out in 12 hours?
Yes, you're right.
Wow.
You, Commissioner.
Going back to Commissioner Rady's, illustrations of the child. If there is a neighbor that calls because they're believing that somebody's getting beat up next door and they show up and everybody is not wanting to talk about it, and there's a child there, say over the age of 12, would they ever make an arrest on the report of the 12-year-old if if it's the woman that's getting beat up and she decides that she's she's in kind of a precarious situation, if she does, she's probably glad somebody called, but would they do an arrest on the word of a child?
Yes. If the additional evidence is there, and let me explain, if there's additional evidence that they can maybe see without the statements from the victim or the suspect, whoever that is, and they get the child's statement that's giving giving evidence towards crime, yes, they would.
Yeah, and I just, these procedures, you know, they're not us, you know, it's, you know, whether it's pediatrics, you know, we have a DMP at Kids First, for child abuse expertise, and like also the damage that domestic violence in your home, even if you're never the one harmed, can do to your brain and your development. So these instructions of us being a little bit more invasive on the home with children, right? Yeah, that's been true for crimes against children. The scope in which we can invade to protect children is much broader than just intimate partner violence, and it is backed just by how much damage domestic violence can do to a child that's even just seated in the home. And so I understand that it is harsh. It does crack open, you know, it cracks open the nut that we need to look at. And that's what they want us to do, and that is why it goes to the judge, right? Some crimes don't go to a judge immediately. They just are like, okay, like here's your court date, right? This is the one that goes like, okay, all right, is everyone in play that's supposed to be in play? DOJ, does the child have a lawyer? Does the parents have a lawyer? Do you have a worker? Do you need a housekeeper? Like, it is a very robust response because of how much, if it breaks completely, like how much we lose for people maybe, right? From one violent situation. So I hear it and I can understand how it does feel radical. It just is.
I don't have a problem with it. It just seems like that's a lot to ask of a 12-year-old. So my next question was a follow-up was gonna be, and I think you've answered this. Once that happens, the DHS comes in and they offer trauma support to the family, specifically to the children who have had to be in that situation. Is that correct?
Yes, our Kids First. Kids
Kid
First, yeah.
Kid First has counselors, and they offer all services too.
And that's mandatory to be offered. That's not, oh, you can call these people. That is something that absolutely has to happen with that family. No.
The intervention has to happen, the services have to be offered.
And that's also in addition, that's a Department of Human Services policy procedure question, when and how and what exactly they offer. In most cases, I think the primary goal is providing a safety plan and follow up, and the goal is the future of the children involved in the circumstance. And so, but that's really a policy procedure question for DHS or Kids First.
Commissioner Reedy?
It's occurred to me, I've been on 3 patrol ride-alongs and there was domestic in each one. How common, how frequent?
That's one of the most frequent calls we go to. I mean, besides your trespassing and your loud noise, your, what I would call the nuisance crime, it's probably one of the most frequent call. I tried to get, a year or 2 ago, I tried to get a good number on how many were dispatched and stuff. It's hard to get a good number because it depends on how our dispatchers and our comm center will input the information as far as, is it a dispute, or is it a domestic dispute, or is it a argument, or sometimes they come out as weird things like loud noise calls. So it's hard to get a good solid number about how many were working, but it is, in my experience throughout here in EPD and elsewhere, it's one of the most common calls we go to. So.
Yes.
I just wanted to add, it's really helpful hearing how you progress through your evaluation. I mean, when I look at this, yeah, it makes sense, but just as a layperson, it's nice to see it through your eyes a little bit, in order that we can provide any kind of feedback of value. So it's worth the time. Thank you.
Any more investigations? And then, did you guys have any more questions on interviewing children? I know we brought to here. Strangulation investigations, there's, I think, actually an entire policy on strangulations, that I'm sure we'll visit. We already did, yeah. Right. The only thing that I was gonna add, in going to that wellness conference for IACP, I went to one that it's about head injuries for officers and people's ability to identify them after a fight, you know. And there was a hang on to that from a professor at a University of Utah regarding those concussion symptoms also presenting a domestic violence victim. So we'll probably add a little bit more to that, that strangulation. Just the restrictive blood flow to the brain can also present as concussion symptoms. Obviously, there's a list of concussion symptoms will add.
Would it be helpful under the strangulation piece, since you say there's a separate policy for that, like, for example, on B on the next page, it says procedure 3.4 sexual assault. Would it be helpful to have something like that in the cross references?
Yes, thank you.
Commissioner Spinsler, I have a question on 320.4.2 E. Officers are strongly encouraged to summon a medical evaluation to the scene if the victim is not taken to the hospital. Why is that? Why is that different than when you go to the hospital and you sign out AMA? You're being told you need to stay, but now you're taking responsibility not to. If somebody's been choked and their trachea could be damaged and they could have problems later on and die. So why is it just strongly encouraged? Why isn't that something that has to happen? And the victim has to say, I'm out, I'm making a informed consent that I don't want that.
Definitely. Yeah, I like it.
Comment, so DHS changed to ODHS, Oregon Department of Human Services, due to the sheer fact, that DHS, a lot of folks get concerned and are cautious because of the Homeland Security, which are different agencies, of course. Is it possible to put a no, so Oregon Department of Human Services? It's semantics, and I already said I wasn't gonna do that, but there is reasoning behind it. Thank you.
Yeah. All good.
Hey,
Commissioner Blake, I was thinking for E. Officers shall request a medical evaluation to the scene if the victim is not taken to the hospital if they have PC for strangulation. Added the PC for the crime.
Thank you.
Then, yeah.
Well, I'm just trying, I'm catching up here, but, is there could be circumstances when a victim may refuse medical attention. Even if, is that what we're talking about?
She said to bring them and have them sign.
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah.
And I was gonna
So
say.
that it's
not-
documented that they refused, yeah, so that they understand that potentially can become something.
And not just like, and that's what the PC. The next section is the service of the court orders. So we have restraining orders in the list of the title of this, but overall it'll be protective orders is what the title will include. There weren't a lot of changes made to this. Except for we did add the Oregon Child Abuse Hotline regarding if an arrest has to be made on both parties. Same reasoning. We did separate other US protection orders versus foreign protection orders. The reason for that is that officers were often getting hung up that they need to investigate if they see a restraining order from like the state of Montana. They don't need to, that is just, we use the proper language, full faith and credit. That a judge in Montana gets the same respect as a Lane County judge of signing a restraining order. They don't need to investigate that the state of Montana exists. And that there's a county there that has this judge name there. They don't have to do that. So the reason is because for foreign protection orders that seem legitimate, they do need to have some level of making sure that it is, because they're not used to seeing them. The courts have asked us to almost kind of like a fugitive from justice, have a little, like, I guess the threshold be PC, like believe more likely than not that it's a real document, and then therefore we're using our arrest powers. Because it's not covered under the US Constitution where the other states' orders are.
so if there's Montana order and they come to Oregon, is it automatically assumed that same order will pertain while they're in Oregon, or
Yes, yes, full faith and credit,
That's what
and
that is. Okay.
yes, and then we should give them a purple card that leads them to our courts if they're like, yeah, I live here now. And then Lane County judge will review that order and say like our jurisdiction, like our judges also sign off on this.
Thank you.
So. The rest was pretty much. Yep, and then the training part, we added the very last part, the 3/20/12 is the department shall schedule a minimum of 2 hours of domestic violence related training annually. All sworn personnel are mandated to attend or complete equivalent training.
I have a question on 320.8.2. If following an investigation, the officer is, oh wait. Sorry, no, I'm hearing paper and I go fast. Okay. If following an investigation, the officer is unable to establish probable cause for an offense and the relationship of the parties falls under family or household member, the officer shall. So is that just, I guess we're talking about domestic violence specifically. So it threw me a little. I might be overthinking this. Is it just essentially saying they have to fall under that category of domestic violence connection, that relationship? Okay, thank you.
For APA to apply. Abuse Prevention Act.
And then I had a question about the hours. Can they have more hours or is, I don't know how much training officers go through in a year. I'm sure it's a lot because there's a lot of things going on, but can it be more? Are you looking into more?
I think this is an arbitrary number to start with. Sergeant McIntyre and Detective Kelly put a lot of work into a recent training for the entire police department to update staff. I think the requirement for at least 2 hours to give updates because these things regularly change, laws change. And then it's a good refresher and it kind of creates that culture of what we want and expectations from our officers when they're out doing their job. So 2 hours is like an arbitrary number. They could get more than that, but that's a number that I think is sufficient to give them proper updates every year.
Thank you.
Can I ask a related question? And this is going back in the policy a bit, but it relates to training. So I was really curious about trauma-informed practices and whether that's like trained specifically for this kind of incident, or if it's trained across, a variety of training modules and how that's tracked in policy or tracked in training. Because it's referenced in the policy, is why I ask.
I'm not sure I understand the question, Commissioner. Could you?
Sure, yeah. I will have to look back. It's in an early section of this policy, but there's sort of reference to using trauma-informed practices when working with individuals who are, obviously subject to trauma. And so I was just curious how that is implemented in training across the police department, or whether it's specific to this kind of incident in the specific training that you were referencing.
Yes,
It's across. Yeah, I think it's across the board and it's in a multitude of different facets of training. And I think there's some intentionality as we build out our training calendar, and just for awareness, we do a training calendar every year and allows different divisions in the police department to speak up about what we think would be good or a requirement. And so there's certain things that are requirements. I think trauma-informed training, and in addition to just a wide variety, a wide scope of these trainings are addressed in that training calendar.
A question. So how many detective sergeants do you have specifically that focus solely on domestic violence cases?
Me.
Do you? Thank you. How many, what's your caseload like per year? I know we talked a little bit about how often that comes up, but.
That's kind of hard to track also, because I get cases from multiple areas. I get them from patrol, I get them from my sergeants. But my biggest caseload usually is coming from the DAs, where they get something and they kind of kick it back down to me for additional stuff. I probably, if I had to estimate anywhere in a year, maybe 100, 150 from the DAs alone and stuff like that. It's usually, I think this week I got 4 or 5 cases, requests for follow-up. And luckily, some of the patrol officers have jumped up and said, hey, I'll take this. And I wanted to hug them for it. But yeah, I think I got 4 or 5 this week. Next week, I might not get any and stuff. So.
Now, when you say they come from the DA, at what point they were obviously, it sounds like not doing anything, that it's gotten to a legal standpoint. So when you say other officers can take those for you, is it really just investigating, looking into those? What does that look for a case? What do you do?
I do what they ask me to do.
Okay.
They usually, our DAs will have a list of things that they believe is required to get that case ready to go to trial. And when our DAs look at any case, that's kind of what the lens they look at. What does it take to get any case ready for trial to where 12 people agree that this occurred? There's a big gap between where our patrol officers look at. Our patrol officers look at it at that a lot of times, but probable cause is a little bit lower threshold. So a lot of times I'm kind of trying to get it from probable cause up to that level of beyond a reasonable doubt for the DAs and stuff. They could do anything from a lot of my stuff is dealing with historic abuse. They might want me to go out and start talking about historic abuse, whether it's within the statute of limitations or not. They might want me to go do things that maybe weren't reasonable at the time patrol was sent out. If patrol was sent out in the middle of the night, it might not be reasonable for them to start knocking on neighbors' doors, waking them up and asking them questions about if they witnessed it, where it's more reasonable maybe for me to go the next day or a day later. A lot of times in domestic violence, not a lot of times, most of the time, our DAs want follow-up pictures of injuries. Injuries change over a few days. A lot of times they look worse and they will want follow-up pictures that maybe the patrol officers on their weekend or just not available and stuff like that. Looking at phones and stuff like that, text messages between people about what was going on and stuff like that. A lot of times it could be a multitude of things, but those are some of the more common things I see requested by the DA's office.
Thank you. That helps kind of paint a picture. I appreciate that. Thank you both for coming tonight.
Thanks for having me.
It's nice to hear every time we go over a policy and we have subject matter experts. Thank you guys. Sergeant Jordan. It's nice to hear and put faces to names. But just see the work that you do, the passion that you have for it, the thought process that lay folks we don't see. We just see officers like the sirens, but the thought that goes behind all of this. And so it's appreciated. All right.
Are you requesting action or are you looking to make revisions and then there were just a couple of minor things, but that's the question, I guess, for this minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think that since there aren't that many changes, and I'm noticing also that there's not a very marked up copy, so I'm sorry about that this time that it didn't show the revisions we made. So there's that, but all the things we've gone over, basically that's what, as long as we're okay with those, I guess I would request that we could get this approved and revised and published again.
Excellent. Just a moment. Thank you for your patience. Okay. Would anybody like to put a motion out to move forward and approve policy 320?
I move that we approve policy 320, domestic violence and restraining orders with the revisions stated during the meeting.
Thank you, Councilor Groves. Do I have a second?
You still have quorum, right?
We have quorum, so we'll move forward. Thank you, Commissioner. All those in favor of moving forward with the changes we've discussed this evening for domestic violence and restraining orders, policy 320, please raise your hand and or say aye. Aye. All right, in the room, we have consensus.
Great.
Yes, we have three individuals online that have raised their hand. Aye. It is passed. Thank you. Closing comments. This went way too fast. Feel like we need to do more stuff. We will, but Vice Chair Bradley, do you have any closing comments?
No closing comments from me today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Neal, any closing comments?
Yeah, just to reiterate the professionalism that we see in the police department, particularly when we get to look beyond just the actions and see the thoughtfulness that goes into policy that sort of guides actions. It's really something as a community member that I appreciate about this department. So thank you very much for your work.
Thank you, Counselor Yay.
I don't have any additional comments, but thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Commissioner Bertrand.
Thank you, Chair. No additional comments for me, though. But thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Lyman.
Just like to thank the detective and sergeant and deputy chief and our facilitator for being here and helping us through this meeting. And this was important. And we did it very efficiently. So congratulations to us.
Counselor Groves.
Thank you, Chair. Same thing. I just appreciate you all being here and helping walk us through this. And again, helping to understand it through your eyes is extremely helpful. And then want to fix something I didn't do earlier. Congratulations, Deputy Chief Burke. Thank you for your service. We appreciate you stepping into this role.
Thank you, Counselor. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Counselor Groves. Commissioner Donovan.
I would just echo everyone's previous sentiments and say thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Espinoza.
I also would like to thank each and every one of you for coming and being patient with our questions and trying to get a little illumination onto what the problem is. I know that it isn't really big. It takes a big chunk of the time in your department to address these issues, and I appreciate that we're all trying to take care of the kids.
Commissioner Rady.
Yeah, I would echo all of that. Excellent discussion. It was really informative, and I hope we will of some little use in our questions, thoughts. I have two things I want to bring up. One of them, I'm in a neighborhood chat group, and there was considerable discussion of an alert for the guy up the tree.
Oh, yeah.
And somehow the alert went out citywide, shelter in place, and people were screaming all over the place. What? Where? What? Why'd they tell us that? Why didn't they say? So I just assume it was someone made an error in the whatever was sent out, or else the people on the discussion group have no idea what they're talking about. Both are possible. I assume you're all aware of that, but I just thought, since that's part of the community I hear talking, I would bring it here. The second concerns, I hope you have all read the article in the Weekly that was the interview with 6 representatives of the Black Bloc, the folks in the masks and the helmets and the shields who want to come out and party in the street in front of the federal building. In light of that, their blockade of 7th Street for several hours. I understand the various reasons why the department chose to stay hands off and not go play with them, which they wanted badly. I'm concerned that this may escalate. And I hope thought is being put into how to deal with it in the way that the Eugene Police does so well, of, calmly and carefully working things through so as to avoid the clash, which I think some people are just itching to organize. And I wish you all luck in that. I have been on that side of the street a good deal in my life, and I know how it looks. And it's not going to be easy, but I expect it's going to increase. And I hope you're talking about it and thinking about it.
Those are great comments, Commissioner. I appreciate it. I'll speak to the first one. There's been a debrief amongst the command staff regarding the shelter in place notice that went out. I will say that it was done with the intentions of keeping our community safe, and we're a learning agency. There was substantial risk at the time the initial thing happened, but we also consider other options for notifying our community so that it doesn't create other, concerns and need this broad kind of notification. So there was a good discussion among our CLCC AIC director and the other captains and discussions with the involved staff. I think it was excellent police work to de-escalate a situation that traditionally and way back when I first started, we would have handled very differently. And I think it was an excellent result, the end of it. And I think the watch commander that was involved with that was trying their best to resolve the situation but there was discussion point to that. Yes, all very concerning. And I think one consideration to take into to think about is when that incident that you're referencing happens, is the staffing that we have allocated at the time, either for a event, or if we don't have the adequate staffing, not placing our officers in immediate danger to try to resolve a situation. So we tried to get there as quick as we could, and then resolve the situation. Blocking streets. It's been a debate over the years and different types of protests, but equally as important as protecting the First Amendment right, I think, is protecting the community members in our streets. It's not okay to assault people and damage vehicles and everything else. And so we have had many discussions about preparation for future activities, and hope to do our best to staff those adequately and able to in order to try to prevent something like that from happening again. I will also say there's work that goes on behind the scenes. Our violent crimes detectives oftentimes are assigned as case agents. This is an ongoing case, so I can't speak to the particulars of it, but I anticipate that there will be arrests out of this in the future for those that blocked the streets and that assaulted community members that were just driving through the intersection. So thank you, though. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner. I have a few things. One, I wanted to thank Dr. Booth. You have jumped into this role like I did into my role, and you've done a lovely job putting this together. And I asked for snacks, and you got snacks and water and flowers. So just thank you for all you do. That is a very minor piece of everything that you do. And I just wanted to thank you for your work. Down below, we have our upcoming meeting dates and agenda items. I've been working, pardon me, Vice Chair and we've been working with Sergeant Jordan and Dr. Boots to kind of plan 2 months ahead. And it's really based on our work plan. So these will shift and change depending on any topics that come up within the community or within our commission as a whole, if somebody has something. So I just wanted to point that out, that we are trying to get 2 months ahead in planning, just so that we have those materials ahead of time so everybody can review those. But they are going to shift and change as we go. It's just sort of a TBD placeholder that we can look at. And then I'm very excited for you, especially Commissioner Donovan, for the Citizens Academy. It is so much fun. I learned so much. And I got to drive a police car, so I'm excited for you to get to do the activities if you so choose to do them, as they're pretty great. And for everybody out there in the world, if you're ever interested in applying for the Citizens Academy, if they have it, if you know nothing about EPD like I did, it is an amazing opportunity, and make your mind up. Make your mind up about EPD, but attend that. It is a commitment, but they go through pretty much every, I want to call them sub-organizations, every department, there we go, departments. Pretty much every department within EPD, and you have subject matter experts talking, and you get to meet the people that work here, and it's a really amazing experience. I highly encourage folks to do so. And also thank you for everybody who joined in our audience tonight. Thank you for being here and taking your evening to be with us, and our wonderful guests for talking and answering all our questions. It helps understand what you all do on a day-to-day. So thank you all. I think we should adjourn. Does anybody else? Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you? I started with you guys. Did I start with
Did
you?
Did you? I'm sorry.
You did.
No,
Okay. Maybe your second guess. I started with no.
Sorry.
Thank you. You guys are keeping me on my toes. Okay.
They're just so important to me. I didn't.
Oh, commissioners caring for commissioners. I love it. Would anybody like to motion to adjourn?
Can't you just adjourn?
Can I?
Yeah.
We're done.
All right.